Good day to all. Today, the topic that I'm going to discuss is standard deviation. We might have heard about standard deviation in most of the statistical tests. But what exactly is standard deviation? And we'll just try to understand the history behind the standard deviation. So, basically, standard deviation is the variability that we wanted to understand in our data set. So this term standard deviation was first used by the Carl Pearson in 1894. Uh, this is one of the most widely used technique to understand the variability inside your data set. Say for example, you have measured, you have a set of dogs uh, among your friends. You wanted to find out the height of those dogs. So you have gathered the data, you have collected the data, and the height are 600 millimeter, 470 millimeter, 170 millimeter, 430 millimeter, and 300 millimeter. So this is the data set that you have received after measuring the height of the dogs. Now you wanted to find out how much variation is there, and you wanted to find out what is the average height of this particular height of the dogs in this particular data set. Okay, so what we are doing is you are trying to find out the mean. So by taking average, you have found that the mean height is 394 millimeter. So this is the mean line, and you wanted to find out what is the height of your dog. Say for example, this is my dog, and from the mean line, my dog has a variation of 206 millimeter from the mean height. Similarly, you are trying to find out what is the difference from the mean height. So to calculate the variance, what you do is you take each difference and square it, and then take the average of the result. So you'll get the variance. So what is standard deviation? Standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. And in most of the statistical tests, instead of variance, you use standard deviation so that you get much more accurate results. So using the standard deviation, we have a standard way of knowing what is normal and what is extra large or extra small. So how can you say that my dog is an extra large dog, or my dog is a very small dog compared to the average? So this is how you do it. You have a mean line, and from there 147 is the normal range, that is above mean line, and below the mean line 147 is the standard or normal level. So if it is above this 147, then your dog is an extra large dog. Or if it is, say, you have a dachshund, and if it is coming under the required normal level, then it is a small dog. So this is how you try to understand the variation inside your data using standard deviation. So what are the properties of standard deviation? Standard deviation shows how much variation is there from the mean. If standard deviation is low, it means that data is close to the mean, whereas the high standard deviation shows that the data are spread out over a large range of values. And this is what you require in a data set. You need to have a sufficient variability inside the data set so that you get much more accurate result. And through standard deviation, you can understand whether it is coming in the normal range or it is spread out evenly throughout the data. So looking into the standard deviation, you can actually understand the variability of your data. Standard deviation may serve as a measure of uncertainty if you want to test the theory, or in other words, want to decide whether measurements agree with theoretical prediction. The standard deviation provides the information. If the difference between mean and standard deviation is very large, then the theory being tested is probably needs to be revised. The mean with smaller standard deviation is more reliable than with large standard deviation. The smaller standard deviation shows the homogeneity of the data. So this also helps you to understand whether the data that you have collected is closer to the theory that you are using, right? So if it is a small standard deviation from the mean, that means probably the theory that you are trying to prove is correct. If there is a big difference from the mean value, that is the standard deviation is high, that means there is something wrong with the data. The value of standard deviation is based on every observation in this set of data. It is only measure of dispersion capable of algebraic treatment. Therefore, standard deviation is used further in the further statistical analysis. As I told you earlier, if you take any other statistical measures, you can understand that most of them uses standard deviation. Very few further statistical analysis use variance as one of their measures. So this proves and this gives you a correct picture about the variability inside the data, and based on that you can actually do further tests. So what are the limitations of standard deviation? While calculating standard deviation, more weight is given to extreme values and the less to those near to the means. When we calculate standard deviation, we take deviation from the mean, and the squared of these obtained deviation, therefore large deviation, when squared are proportionally more than small deviation. For example, the deviation is 2 and 10 are in the ratio 1:5, but they squared 4 and 100 are in the ratio 1:25. So this is one limitation of the standard deviation. So thank you. We'll see in the next session.